So former President Trump has been under a microscope quite a bit recently, for obvious reasons. I mean, when you look at what he did in 2020 with the fake elector slate, the fraudulent elector scheme, and there's a tremendous amount of evidence and documents and emails and text messages and all that stuff that's being uncovered in court, which shows the extent to which he was involved and how he was quite literally trying to steal the election. I mean, they were floating things like seizing voting machines, declaring martial law, all sorts of stuff. And now you got all these cases, these court cases around those things, right? 91 criminal charges on a variety of different things, including, what he did with classified and top secret documents. We don't need to get into the specifics of that here, but suffice to say, he's under a microscope because he's acted in brazenly illegal ways and potentially illegal ways time and time again. One of the things that has kind of creeped me out a little bit is the normalization of his extremism and his criminality. And we have yet another example of that right here, which should really, really snap people out of it and wake them up as to what we're facing in the next election. So Trump posted on Truth Social. This account here takes whatever he says on Truth Social and puts it on Twitter. And he was talking about what's happening at the border. Okay? And he said the following: "We encourage all willing states to deploy their guards to Texas to prevent the entry of illegals and to remove them back across the border. All Americans should support the common sense measures by Texas authorities to protect the safety, security, and sovereignty of Texas and of the American people. When I am president, on day one, instead of fighting Texas, I will work hand in hand with Governor Abbott and other border states to stop the invasion, seal the border, and rapidly begin the largest domestic deportation operation in history. Those Biden has let in should not get comfortable because they will be going home." Okay, so I want to reiterate the first point one more time, because it's super important. He says, "We encourage all willing states to deploy their guards to Texas to prevent the entry of illegals, etc., etc." What he's encouraging states to do is to openly defy the U.S. Constitution and settled law as determined by the Supreme Court. For those of you who don't know the backstory, it was a 5-4 decision where the Supreme Court said, hey, federal Border Patrol agents are in charge at the border. That is the purview of the federal government to handle border policy. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said, no, wrong, I disagree. I'm sending the Texas National Guard down to the border. They're going to put up razor wire. They're going to put up razor buoys, which, by the way, led to the deaths of a number of people, including 2 children and a woman recently, who died because of Greg Abbott's policies, and Border Patrol tried to get there to save them, and they were blocked by the Texas National Guard. So the Supreme Court interjects and says, hey guys, you're all on the same side here, right? But the law is the law. The Constitution is the Constitution. We have this little thing called the Supremacy Clause, and what that means is the federal government is in control at the border. Well, now you have a clash at the border because Greg Abbott said, I disagree. Guess what? Other Republican governors said, I side with Greg Abbott, and I'm going to send the National Guard from our state down to the border as well. So now you have a standoff between federal Border Patrol and conservative National Guards from a bunch of conservative states. What are we doing here? So make no mistake about it. This might sound hyperbolic, but it's absolutely accurate. Trump is calling for rebellion against the United States. Also, let's clear up this notion, this idea that Joe Biden is trying to use federal Border Patrol to actually open up the borders, to have open border anarchy. Utter nonsense. In fact, right now, the Senate and the president have worked out a deal which would allow Joe Biden to close the border on day one if the bill is passed. And it's Trump and all of the MAGA Republicans who came out and said, no, kill that deal. We don't want that. Well, you can't say to Joe Biden, hey, get your act together and protect the border. And then when he goes, okay, I'm going to protect the border, you go, no, I'm against it. You just told him to do it. Then he goes to do it. And you're like, I'm against that. How dare you? So he's calling for rebellion for the sake of rebellion. When you say, I'm going to back the Texas National Guard over the federal government, even though the Supreme Court and the Constitution say federal government is supreme and they get to decide border policy, you are openly calling for rebellion. And he's saying, hey, other states, join the rebellion. And by the way, somebody mapped on the states that said we're going to back Texas. And it's just the Confederacy. Like, it's just they're getting the gang back together type stuff. So, look, the thing that's so wild about this to me is, like, this is literally a disagreement about nothing. Joe Biden is very conservative on the border. Don't take my word for it. Go read the bipartisan deal, which they're trying to get passed. It's not close. It's not open to interpretation. It is very obviously the most conservative deal on the border in decades. So Biden's a conservative on this. Of course, the Border Patrol is very conservative. Their whole job is to protect the border. They're trying to do that. And then you have the Texas National Guard and all these Republican states. They're like, no, we're just going to get in the way because we want to be more conservative. We want to act illegally and put up razor wire, which leads to the deaths of migrants. So it's not a left versus right thing. It's not a liberal versus conservative thing. It is a conservative versus conservative thing. And even in the scenario where Joe Biden is like, I agree with you conservatives, and that's what my policy is going to be, the reaction is wrong. We're going to defy the Supreme Court. We're going to defy the Supreme Court, defy the law, defy the Constitution, and start a rebellion over Dickie McGee's acts. So, guys, I literally don't know how he gets away with the stuff he gets away with. I don't get it. I mean, how many times has he been ordered by the courts? Hey, you can't go after court employees. You can't put them in danger. You can't dox them. And then, like, he puts them in danger. He doxes them. They get, like, swatted and all that stuff, and nothing happens. He's gone against the terms of his pretrial release a million times, and nothing happens. You know, they have him on charges for the election subversion stuff, but he tries to do an insurrection, and he's still walking around. Now he's calling for rebellion openly again, and people just act like, oh, this is just another day. We have absolutely normalized rampant criminality among Trump and the MAGA Republicans, to the point where now they're doing a standoff with the federal government over absolutely nothing. When Biden agrees on being super right-wing on the border, they're like, I don't care, somehow not right-wing enough, and now we're going to do a standoff and maybe threaten some sort of war with the Border Patrol. Somehow being at war with the Border Patrol is being they're spinning it as like, this is pro-border security. Well, if you're not letting Border Patrol do their job, what are you talking about? So, look, I mean, it's just amazing to me that this is like not being treated as what it is, which is an open call to rebellion. Again, another terrible attempt at an insurrection. And guys, I don't know how this gets resolved, right? I don't know how this gets resolved. Greg Abbott and now all the Republican governors in the country are literally begging for the federal government and Biden to, like, nationalize their respective state guard. Like, they're begging for it. Because what else is Biden supposed to do? Just say, okay, the law doesn't matter, the Constitution doesn't matter, you're right, the states override the federal government at the border? He can't do that. So what are we even doing? And again, I want to reiterate, it's all over nothing, because Biden is right-wing on the border. He's deported more people than Trump. He kept in place a lot of Trump's own policies, Remain in Mexico, for example, Title 42, for a very long time. And then now he wants the ability to totally shut down the border on day one after they pass this deal, but they don't even want to pass a deal. None of it makes any sense, and that's what drives me crazy the most. It's one thing if you come to some sort of a conflict, but it's because you have deeply held principled beliefs that are at odds. We're nowhere near that. Effectively, they're agreeing on all this, but still, rebellion for rebellion's sake, insurrection for insurrection's sake. Middle finger up just for the sake of putting the middle finger up, even though there's no there at the core and you guys functionally agree on the policy at the border. I can't, man. I can't. Another day, another open call to commit a brazen crime from Donald Trump. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.